Well, welcome everyone. So glad everyone's here today. I'm also really glad to be able to chat with you today on the topic of sustainable energy transition in the Canadian territories, and particularly at the community level. And so I guess, given that this is an opportunity to hear Northern voices, to hear Northern experiences around the topic of sustainable energy transitions, I thought it would be really useful to really understand what are some of the opportunities and challenges. So, for instance, with respect to, potential adoption of technologies or some policies, and the first person I see on my screen is Jimmy. So, Jimmy, I don't know if you want to say a quick hello and tell the audience a little bit about your experiences in Joe Haven.
Yes, hi, I'm Jimmy Outlook from Joe Haven. I'm a building maintainer foreman. Well, I didn't go to school until I was 8 years old because my parents were living a nomadic life, and this is where I am today. And well, I got into a catalyst program, and I got into it because of cost of living is so high in the north, and also a lot of environmental change that are happening in the north. Like um, when I was growing up, like we used to be boating in June. We're driving our snowmobiles until July, and we used to be out on a lake fishing by second week of September. We're still boating, and those are the things. That's why I got into renewable energy program because of so much environmental changes that are happening, and it impacts our way of living. Yeah, the renewable energy program is very new to our people. Well, not for everybody, but right now it's mostly I'm educating my people like by using solar panels and turbines, switching to that. Um, Reduce also cost of living and reduce CO2 getting into our atmosphere. And like even our elders notice a lot of change on the environment. And like right now, they don't really understand what's causing it, because of all the trucks and snowmobiles and planes that are using fossil fuel. And right now, I'm mostly educating our people about um, environmental impacts from CO2 getting into our atmosphere by using fossil fuel. So like it's a lot of challenge because everything has to come in by either plane or by sea lift. If I miss something and if they can be on the plane, I have to wait for sea lift, and those are the things that I have to make my people understand. Like, we have to try and get things right the first time. So right now, it's mostly educating our people how to use renewable energy. Like we never really got into like I got some few stuffs here in Joe Haven. Like we have net metering system in one of my buildings with the hamlet of Joe Haven. Arctic Research Foundation has a off-grid um, research station, and I do projects with them too. So those are the things that we try and educate our people right now. What is renewable energy?
We're a tiny, a very small little village in the northern Yukon. Our people are referred to as Vuntutquitchin, and we live a life that is still quite tied to the land. And if our people go, say, for instance, length of time, say, without caribou meat, for instance, it's pretty hard on the people because we're used to it. We're used to eating caribou meat almost every day and that type of thing. um, we're also a self-governing First Nation, and we fall under the umbrella final agreement, which is it's a thing in the Yukon. And we've been actively involved sort of in a general sense, I guess. And many of us are unified on it. You know, talking about climate change, fighting against industrial development in critical habitats like the Arctic National Wildlife Refuge, for instance. And recently, we've built a solar farm in our community. I forget the wattage and all that stuff in it. I'm not closely involved enough with it to know everything about it, but we named it Shrevia, which is actually what we refer to the rainbow. We refer to the rainbow as Shrevia, but literally, in the literal sense, it means sun snare. And so I guess the idea is because we're capturing the sun just like a snare. And we're also looking at a wind project, biofuel, and that's about all I can think of right now.
I was an employee of the Vantakwichin government for a number of years, and latterly worked as the energy coordinator. And in my time with the Vantakwichin government, I supported the construction of the solar project that Brandon just referred to, and some of the earlier stages of the wind feasibility and the biomass project. So I've actually been away for a few years now, but yeah, that was my role. Of course, the most obvious opportunity that we found when we were developing the Shrevia, and sorry, Brandon, my pronunciation will never be right, in developing that project.
Close enough. Yeah.
Thank you. That's a big honor. It's just the 24-hour sunlight, you know, and in contrast to the expense of needing to fly diesel to the community to power the generators, it actually created great circumstances for a strong business case because the cost of diesel was so high and the sunshine is so plentiful. So, you know, you think about it being impossible or unrealistic to have solar generation in the north, and that's absolutely not the case, as that project so well demonstrated.
Like I'm starting off with these cabin solar panels. A lot of people stay in their cabins, and by using solar generators in their cabins. Like I got some few feedback saying that they save this much money on using white gas or diesel to generate their generators. Like it did impact a lot of big time. Like it saved us a lot of fuel, but not for everybody. Like I still have to continue educating our people about how it works. So like for them, even though that diesel is so expensive, they rather use diesel because they just have to go out there and start it. But I know it impacted our people. It saved us a lot of fuel by using solar generators. The things that they expect a lot from, like, if I tell them that it's going to save them money by using solar and generators, but understand my land, like my land in Joe Haven, like starting end of September, solar generators don't work until last week of February, and we still have to rely on diesel no matter what. Like I was told by scientists and people that, well, switch to wind turbines, but when it gets cold up here, there's no heat, and there you have to heat and cold has to combine together in order to make wind. But we don't have any winds when there's no daylight up here. Like it's so cold. Wind turbine is useless up here, and also a solar generator is useless because it's total darkness up here at that time. Then that's one of the things that it makes our people to it makes them hard to switch to solar generators and wind turbines because it's kind of useless up here.
My colleague from Joe Haven there is really making a lot of good points. And I was hoping I would be able to talk about this because that's what my fear is. I don't care what anybody says. I don't care if it's minus 40, minus 50 in Calgary right now. That means nothing to me. They get minus 40, minus 50 for one day. Big whoop-de-doo. We get minus 40, minus 50 for 2 weeks, 3 weeks sometimes a month straight. Now, 2 or 3 days, probably not going to cause much problems, and we could probably make do with some new technology or whatever. But once you start getting into 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 consecutive days of minus 40, minus 50, things break down. Everything breaks down. The freaking human body breaks down even. So if what works in this country is the simplest, most practical machinery. That's what works in this country. People really, one thing they don't like is how fancy everything is getting. And the fancier things get, the less practical they are in a place like this. The simpler the machinery, the better they work. Often, the simpler the machinery, the more pollutant it is. That's the biggest conundrum that we face. So we better have reliable technology for this part of the country because we can't afford to have the lights go out and then all free and have a portion of the town freeze to death because a lot of us don't have wood anymore. And even if we were to say, for instance, switch all back to wood all at once, say, for instance, if we wanted to be more reliable, for instance, in case power went out or something, then we would end up exhausting our wood resources. We need way more wood now than we did 30 or 40 years ago because our houses are all bigger now. And we would exhaust there's not much wood up here in the first place, so we would exhaust our wood resources if we had to all use wood. And so we have to make sure this stuff is practical. We cannot afford to have running blackouts and those types of things, or whatever you would call them up here, because then people would end up freezing in their houses.
Cove Lake is about 50 kilometers above the Arctic Circle. It's really isolated. The only way to get here in the winter time is by winter road. We're not on a waterway. So in the summer, when the winter road is not open, we fly all year round. All the supplies and that come in on air and then on the trucks in the winter time for about 4 months. Our power situation, we got power in 1993, 94, around there. Before that, we were just running on generators. We just started build our infrastructure about 2005, 2010. We started getting all our roads. We put in our running water and sewer and stuff like that for our community houses. But right now, back in those days before we got the solar panels and all those things, we were cut off on power a lot. The power plant used to always go down. So, nowadays like everybody has wood stoves. And when the power goes out, we just fall back on that because most of us remember a time when we had no power. And we just lived by candlelight and those sort of things. Some of us, probably about over 40, remember those things, right? And since we got solar panels and we're expanded into those sections, we have an influence and a way to grow ourselves. It's not really relevant and reliant on other people doing stuff for us all the time. We have to learn these things for ourselves. We can't always depend on somebody else to know what we want. We have to do that ourselves. We have to go out and we got to learn about all these different things in order to build what's needed here. We can't take a southern thing and modify it to be relevant up here. We have to make sure we know what we need and then build it here. And I think that's really important because it's we come from here. we've lived and born, and all the generations previous to us were up here, and we kind of have an idea what's going to work, what's not going to. And I think, having solar panels and all these other things that don't have no moving parts, have less wear and tear. It runs by the sun. We have 24-hour daylight in the summer times. And, the batteries maybe gets overused, but with the more technology that's being used in these areas, I think, the research and development will meet the consumer demand, right? And, those prices will drop as we go. So I think it's good that we're doing these things. I know it's costly when it's done in the north, but it has to happen somewhere. We can't rely on these things happening in the south because our needs are different, our demand is different. And if we have these things building, other companies and other places will start getting the research and the data relevant to here. Because you want to build something that's going to work and that's hardy. And I think having stuff that's built in the north will work anywhere. They understand that we don't need fuel for it. We don't need gas. We just leave it out in the sun and it provides electricity. Lights go on. But our power plant, our power rates never really drop because we're in a category of 1, 2, and 3 in the north. One being in we're on the outlying community, so we have a tier of prices. It's not by independent communities. If we were that, we would probably be paying pretty well close to a lower power rate. But whatever we pay goes into other people that needs it in the north. So sometimes when Yellowknife is not running off their hydro and they're going off diesel, some of it comes from here.
Okay, so we've been talking a lot about opportunities and challenges, and I guess another key component, this is where I'm going to put my policy hat on, but I'm curious to see what you think about some of the settler government policies. Do you find some helpful? Do you find, for instance, like, what do you think about the carbon tax? Or what about some of the federal government incentives, to help support renewables? I'd be curious to know some of your thoughts on those.
Up here, like this carbon tax, like everybody hates it up here. Um, I know that we do get fundings through it, but um, you know, it's not really doing anything for us. Like it's just making our people suffer like crazy right now um, because of carbon tax. It affects our shipping costs. Not only our shipping costs, it started off from wherever that food is coming from, produce, store-bought food that, it starts from there, from the mill or the distributor, wherever it's coming from. And then it keeps adding up when it's flying up here or either being shipped on the sea lift, cost of fuel, carbon tax there, and then when it goes to our store, and then it adds on again. So how many percent of it did it go up since it started traveling to Joe Haven? So it very impacted our way of living, and it's been very hard for some people. Like even people have good income, if they have six-figure numbers income coming to their house, but they still suffering every single day. Like they live paycheck after paycheck because of all the taxes that are happening in the north. Like it makes it feel like we're not part of Canada. It feels like we're being taxed for something for borrowing to live in Canada, but really, we were here before everybody else. But it creates a lot of problem to our people to have all these taxes and bills that are coming up for carbon taxes, anything like that. It makes a lot of people unhappy.
Having carbon tax in the north is irrelevant. It's stupid to have it up here. Our carbon footprint is very small compared to the rest of the country. It's not doing anything for us. The amount of subsidies and these things that the government is doing, it just offsets that. It makes it worse. It doesn't do anything. Maybe in other parts of the country, it probably influences consumers to do something different, but we have no choice. All these things are put in by the government. The power plant, all these things were done by the government, and it was easier for them to run off of diesel. And then we're asked to pay those things. It's kind of backwards. As we move away from these things, then maybe we can. But then what happens when we do move away? We're still paying the carbon taxes. Take GST, for instance. In 1985, they said it was just going to be for a little while. It's still here. So if we do carbon tax, are we still going to be paying that next 40 years? I think it's not, it doesn't make any difference. It just makes people's lives worse, especially in a place where you have no employment. When you look at the dynamics of the North, it's all social dependence. It's not economically based because there's no economics, there's no mining, there's very little things happening around. But the only thing that could happen up here is that we have to build it, we have to develop, but then have setbacks.
If I can jump in for 1 second, I mean, I guess what I'm reminded of is the whole importance of having an equity lens. So, I mentioned I grew up in a small town in Northern Ontario where basically we didn't have a public transit system. So hence I had to learn to drive, my parents had to drive, etc. And so even if we think about things like a carbon tax or the rollout of electric vehicles and chargers, etc., it's really important to think about it from an equity lens, right? So, because, people in Toronto, where I am in Ottawa, we have a lot more choices than, say, other parts of the country.
Well, I feel like skipping the carbon tax part and just talking about the policy part. And just to say that if we think that a low carbon future has got to be a better future, and the way to make it a better future is to have policies in place that allow things like community ownership of community energy projects. We can't, and that requires a shift in thinking and new policies in order to enable that. And I think that is happening. Whether it's happening fast enough, I'm not sure. But policies that allow communities to be empowered to have their own projects and not be reliant on developers will make all the difference a generation from now or even just a few years from now. So I do think that the policy piece is really crucial to the transition as a whole.
From the very beginning in my community, I was telling people, people like Rosa, for instance, that, do not make this about saving money. We cannot make this about saving money. And I explained to the people who were on the energy file at the time when I held the portfolio that we need to get the most important thing is to get buy-in from the community. And if we start making this about saving money, when the time comes and it turns out that we don't end up saving money, even though we planned to save money for people, say, for instance, saving money on energy, and the time comes and they don't end up saving money, now you're going to have people against the project. So it shouldn't be about saving money for the people. The most important thing is to get buy-in from the community. This is about sacrifice as much as it is about gaining things.
You as community members, is there something you really want to highlight? Is there a key takeaway message that you want to leave for readers who are embarking on this journey, wanting to learn more about communities in the North and sustainable energy transitions?
I work with my language every day, and I have elders who I work with, and we translate old stories together. And every one of those elders, they always reiterate all the time, over and over again, the importance of keeping our land pristine. It was extremely, extremely important to our elders. And even when land claims happened, they were in disagreement with it. And they weren't in disagreement with it because they didn't think we should have control of our land. They were in disagreement with it because they didn't want to give up any of their land, which is what we ended up doing in that process, is we gave up some of our land to the Crown. They wanted every inch of our land to be controlled by us because they didn't trust our land to outsiders. I'm not going to say white people. I'm going to say they didn't trust our land to capitalists. That's what I'm going to say. Okay, people who are concerned only with what's under the ground, they're not concerned with what's on top of the ground, which is what we're concerned with. And they didn't want capitalists to have any control over any of their land because they didn't want any industrial development, none. And the only reason they allowed for industrial development in our land use plan is because they knew people were going to need jobs and they didn't want to handcuff future generations. This, to them, was like cutting off one of their thumbs. They basically sacrificed one of their thumbs just in case people were going to need those jobs in the future, just so their kids don't end up going hungry. And they cut off one of their thumbs to make sure that didn't happen. That's the equivalent of allowing that industrial development to happen on our land. So what we are doing here is speaking directly to that. Okay? This is about motivating our people to play a role and to take a part in this new initiative moving forward into the future that's being taken on by the world. But it's also an opportunity for us to realize our ancestors' dreams too. Our ancestors' dreams were that we, the next generation, would keep our lands pristine. And we cannot keep our lands pristine while also developing it with industrial development and while also flying fuel into our communities in order to get the electricity that we need. That's not practical or sustainable either. We need to start looking at how are we going to realize our elders' dreams, but at the same time, we're going to be playing a role in the grander scheme of things. For me, just as an individual, I do not speak for all my people, but for me as an individual, what I would like to see is I would like us to step up and say, you know what? Most of our lands are undeveloped. Most of our lands are still pristine. And we have the opportunity to keep our lands undeveloped and to keep our lands pristine. And I would like us to see us just like start looking at, can we start getting credit for the amount of carbon that our pristine natural environment sequesters? We have wetlands that are like giant sponges which filter air and water. And we do everything we can to keep those wetlands pristine. And we do not allow industrial development even to happen near those wetlands. And I would like us moving forward to just say, look, we have this awesome opportunity. Let's just take it. Let's protect all our land. Let's make sure no industrial development happens there. And let's allow these lands to provide the service to the world that these lands provide in the way that they filter air and filter water. And that's all I wanted to say. I just wanted to speak to the philosophy around it and how it speaks to the dream of my elders. And I just want to reiterate this: we need to get buy-in in our communities. We need people to realize that this is about sacrifice as much as it is about gaining something. We cannot make this. I'm not going to say cannot. I'm not going to, people have their own choices. We really shouldn't make this about saving money. And we should manage those expectations. If we don't manage those expectations, when the time comes and people don't end up saving money, they're going to be against the project.
For us, like in the beginning, it was about saving money. It was about having some stability with our power. We were on something that was a hand-me-down from another community. We had a generator plant that was supposed to be temporary back in 1990 something, and it was here till about 2014, 12, around there. And we went and added solar panels, a new plant, uh, experimental batteries. At the time, it was to save cost. And, we did save costs. We saved operation costs, but it didn't come to us, and our community didn't pay any less. But our power plant cost is less, but we have stability, which we really wanted. Our generator plant was going down every couple days or every few weeks. The power people were here fixing it up all the time. Um, one bad thing about it is that when we want to hook up a new house now, we have to charter the damn thing to come here. And, it costs us about 15 grand to hook up a new house, plus their time and plus their whatever. But back then, because all these things were happening, that was a plus. But now it doesn't go down very much. Maybe once every couple of months. But right now we have stability. In the summertime, our generator is not running. It's just solar panels. There's no sound, just that. But you could see what's happening. We're getting away from running on, diesel energy. We're falling back on sunlight. We've expanded what's at the power plant to a couple of our other buildings. But right now we're starting to talk with the utility board about removing the cap on what you could get back. Right now we got 15 kilowatts, and that's all you could do. You can't feed that to the grid and get back the money that you put in. What's going on the grid? I think if we were to expand those things, I think we would make it economical. We don't want to be overpaying for what we have. I think having a way to cut costs on our power is one thing, but at the same time, we have to get back for what we're putting in. And I think having that profit on that would pay for other things that we want to expand on. There's a lot of things that we could do. There's a lot of technologies out there that we could bring in. I also see that there's old fuel, dirty, oils that are going out that we have to bring south to dispose of. I know that we could burn it off somewhere and do heating from that, but we need to buy those things and bring them in. I think explaining it to people that a lot of my people understand that we're still paying the same power rates, but our power plant is not burning diesel. In the summertime, you could hear it. There's nothing running, and yet we're still having power. Generator's not going. There's no diesel burning. It's just sunlight, and so you could. But yet they still have to pay the same power rate as everybody else. So nobody's complaining about it.
Are there some key takeaway messages that you want to leave the audience with?
Maybe I would just say that in a way it's reiterating a lot of what Brandon just said, but for me professionally, it was such a great experience working on Sri Via with the Vantak Gwitchin because there was such a strong connection between the project and what the community wanted or how well it tied in with the vision of the community, like Brandon says, that was set out in the final agreement and the self-government agreement, and the ability to connect that power generation project with themes of self-determination and economic stability really made the work valuable to me. And I think it's really important going forward that this is the baseline for these big development projects when the opportunities come up, like how well aligned they are with the community values and what the community wants, and really needs to be put forward by community members for these projects to be successful.
my thought is like we're trying to save the environment. We're trying to prevent CO2 getting to the atmosphere. And when they talk about free energy, how is it free? Like, like even if we switch to renewable energy, like if our power treatment plant is not even running because we're totally running off solar energy, which we don't have here in the north right now. How come people are still paying the same rate? Like it's kind of carbon tax is still there. Like it's still affecting these people. Like they still paying that rate. Why? That gets frustrating for our people. That makes our people want to say, why should we go into renewable energy if they're not going to even offset our cost of living? Those are the things that get very frustrated living in the north. And, like I said, cost of building something. I'll use myself for example. I do like it's like I'm trying to do a feasible study on a lot of things on biomass, anything renewable energy. Like for my daughter, she owns her own house. I bought enough wood pellets for her to offset her use of diesel heating, which cost me little over $500. But the freight was over $3,000 for a product that I bought.
Wow.
Those are the things that affect our people. Like, why go to renewable energy when it's not going to even offset our cost of living today? Like, even if we're 100% running, like, if that ever happens in my community, I would like to see that, they change the operation cost rate for using power. Like when one of my colleagues just finished talking, saying that their generators completely off when it's 24-hour daylight. It's still not free energy. Um, the the power company, the hydro company is still collecting the same rate when they should be offsetting their cost of living. That's one of the things I've been trying to work on for a long time. Like every time I try, I'm succeeding somewhere. Our government, our territorial government, our federal government always come up with a bill or a tax, and that keeps getting higher. And it's not really doing anything, and it's just like when I do a feasible study, make it look like it's going to happen, and then when these new bills are formed and the new taxes are coming up, it changes everything again. Now I have to start all over and try and find a easier way to do a feasible study. To go nuclear energy, I think that's the only way to do it for us up here to get off diesel, but that is very dangerous to use too. Our ground is always shifting. Permafrost fluctuates up and down, in the wintertime and summertime, and it causes heaving and everything else. Like, it's just too dangerous to go into nuclear energy. Like they keep talking about these new nuclear generators are very simple to use, but um, our people are not educated on those things. So that's my thought right now.
Thank you so much for sharing everything. And it's interesting that I see key themes coming up time and time again in terms of, number one, who is benefiting and how can our community benefit. And if it's not, then the reality is people are probably going to be less receptive to it. And number two, so hence the point about aligning to the values and as some of the earlier conversations, the importance of thinking about respecting the elders and going back to practices that have happened in the past and also bringing them forward and combining them with what practices today and towards the future and future generations. So I think all of the work that you're all doing is amazing personally.
I just want to say that, what we're saying is relevant. I think having these things go out in the news will, at least we influence policy changes somehow. They want to have buy-in. The territories want to have buy-in from the communities. If they see these issues going out and we're saying, well, we're not saving anything, we're all these different things, obviously it's going to cause some shift in policy. Because, policy is not changed when we're silent. It's only changed when there's a lot of voices out there saying the same thing. And I think it's a good thing that we're talking about these things. It's a good thing that we're having an interview. It's a good thing that we have this book going. And, the more minds that are thinking about these things, it's good. It has to start somewhere. And I think this is a good thing. Thank you.